Hi, I'm John Sandham, and this is episode 2 of Beyond the Gates, the podcast from St. Andrews College. This series aims to showcase the accomplishments, journeys, and enduring connections of Andrians, both on and off campus. In this episode, our guest is a second-generation Andrian. During his 4 years at St. Andrews, Stephen Amell was an accomplished athlete who held various leadership roles, in addition to delivering several standout performances as an actor. You'll hear how Stephen's career direction can be traced back quite directly to his experience on stage at SAC, in large part thanks to a faculty member who encouraged, or rather told Stephen, to get involved in the dramatic arts. In the years that followed, Stephen relocated to Los Angeles, back to Toronto, then again to LA, and eventually found success on screen as a leading man of television and film. You may know him best from shows like Arrow, that one running for 8 seasons, Heels, Suits LA, and more. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Here's my discussion with Stephen Amell from the class of 2000.
I heard about St. Andrews a lot growing up. My dad went to the school for a number of years. He left before his graduating year, but he would always talk to me about the school. And just for whatever reason, it wasn't on my radar. When I attended, it started at 7th and it went to grade 13. So I didn't actually go until 10th grade. And it was because 7th through 9th grade, I got really into skiing. And after my 9th grade year, I applied to the National Ski Academy in Collingwood. And basically, my family just sat me down and said, listen, if you're going to apply to that, you should also apply to St. Andrews. So we went up to the school, and I'll never forget, I had a meeting with Mr. Bedard, who was the headmaster for my 10th grade year. And I got accepted. I got accepted to the National Ski Academy. And it just seemed like a very simple choice when I had the two options in front of me. So we picked St. Andrews. And yeah, so I came in 10th grade. And that was how it was on my radar. It was, if there was going to be a boys' school, a private school experience, it was only ever going to be St. Andrews. There were no other options presented to me.
But it wasn't, if I'm understanding correctly, it wasn't like your father attended here, so it was always in the cards that you would be coming here.
Yeah, we just for whatever reason, it wasn't something that we explored until 10th grade. I often think if my career at St. Andrews would have been different if I had started in 7th, but I don't know. I think maybe 9th would have been a sweet spot, but the 4 years that I had were certainly full. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's run down a bit of the resume here. You already covered the skiing aspect of it. There was swimming, there was rugby, there was football, drum major as well in the pipes and drums, prefect and member of Flavel House. Skiing, obviously, you had talked about as another option. You had some great teams there in the late 90s here at St. Andrews.
We did. If I'm going to go run it down, I think we won the CISAA championships in 10th grade when I was skiing for the school. And then I think I skied 1 more year or 2 more years. And then I stopped and I shifted over to swimming. And I think that we won the CISAA championships when I was in 12th grade, I believe. And then we had an amazing football team in my 12th grade year. We beat, who did we beat? We beat Upper Canada to win the CISAA championships. And then I think it was called the Metro Bowl back then. We made it to the semifinals. And then we lost in my grade 13 year in heartbreaking fashion at St. Mike's. We were up 21-0. I was the punter as well, and I made a stupid play and got a kick blocked, and we ended up losing by like 28 points. But
yeah, so it wasn't that one mistake.
No, it wasn't. But that's not what it felt like at the time, John. It felt like it was that one mistake. And then we ended up losing to a school. I can't remember the name of the school, but it was in the Metro Bowl finals again. And they ended up going on to win. And they had, his name was Jesse Lumsden at running back, and who ended up going on to play in the CFL and then Canadian universities and then the CFL. We had some good rugby teams. I don't think we ever won CISAA, but we won York Region one year. And then Mr. Walden was my swim coach. And the first term that I ever took off of sports was the second term. I skipped in my graduating year because I was playing Tony in West Side Story.
Yes.
And I think he's forgiven me, but it took some time. But yeah,
there's always competing interests here when there's so many things to do in so little time.
Sure.
I will say as well, when I ran down the list before, I didn't even cover the theater portion of it because I wanted to read one thing first before we do that. And it was a post that you made on social media a while ago. It was a photo with William Schooler. So I'll read a little bit of what you said here. The gentleman in this picture, William Schooler, is the reason I became an actor. He approached me in 1977 after a spring rugby practice to inform me that I would have a part in the fall play at my high school. I thought he was out of his mind. A couple of words here that stick out to me about that, and that is that he informed you that you would have a part in the fall play.
That's right.
That seems more like he was telling you than asking you.
Well, I'm Mr. Schooler, William. I still call him Mr. Schooler. I try my best. But when in the context of St. Andrews, I'm just going to say Mr. Schooler because it feels more normal. Him still being at the school, I'm sure that there are old boys and current students alike that have been approached by him and have been told politely, but told that they are going to do something. I had no inclination whatsoever that I was going to pursue a career in the arts. I didn't even really understand that completely until several years after being at the school. But certainly my interest was sparked because there was a drama festival that was taking place in Ottawa during my 10th grade year, and I wanted to go on it to get off of school to drive to Ottawa to go meet girls. And I ended up with this small part in the play Inherit the Wind. And I was just in the background, but he saw me, spotted me, told me I think he said great focus, and that I was going to be in the fall play. And he told me the part that I was going to play as well. And I mean, maybe it was naivete. Maybe I was curious. I can't totally remember, but it didn't really feel like I had much of a choice in the matter.
I think that theme is going to come up again as we explore some of your other interactions with William down the line. What was that show, that first show and that first role?
That was Macbeth, and I played Malcolm, who is the son of the slain king who rises back up to power at the end of the play after Macbeth is felled. And man, so you're allowed to say the name of that play when you're not
actually in a theater.
In the play, in the theater. And William explained this to us when he was pitching the play. And I don't know if this came up in your research, but in one of the dress rehearsals, maybe 3 or 4 nights before the curtain came up, I'm on the top level of the stage saying this speech that ends the play. And then a spotlight shines right into my eyes. Really, the lights go up before they go all black. So I'm staring essentially not directly into this light, but it goes from very bright to very dark. And I turned around to walk down the stairs and stepped right off the top level of the play. And it's the worst sound that you can hear in the theater, which is the lights go out and then you hear crash. And I was extremely lucky. I fell probably 10 or 12 feet and banged my head a little bit. Just sort of like some blunt force trauma, but it could have been significantly worse. I had to spend the night in the hospital. And then when the play went up, first of all, everyone knew it was cursed. I think Greg Muser, who is he was the head prefect that year. Mark Gooderham, who was the class before me, who I'm still friends with, struck him in the head with a sword, and he had to get a bunch of stitches. So all of us scoffed at the notion that Macbeth was cursed, but it is. And I now hold it in much more respect than I did previously.
And you're telling me this was your introduction to the theater?
This was it.
Have you done that play since?
No. I mean, I did A Midsummer's Night Dream the following year. And then in my graduating year, I did West Side Story, which is kind of like Romeo and Juliet. But nonetheless, I haven't done Shakespeare since then.
And West Side Story, obviously, that seemed like a pretty stacked cast as well.
We had a bunch of guys in bigger parts who had never done theater before. And I think that that's part of the magic of what William does. But I think what the school does writ large is they don't put people in one particular box. Just because you're on the hockey team or you're on the football team or you're on the rugby team doesn't mean that you can't be in the fall play or the winter play or have a big part in Focus. And I'm sure that the school has gotten even more progressive since I've been there. But when I'm there, we are not too far away from and probably still in the era and mode of thinking that you're either a jock or you're a theater geek or you're a math nerd or whatever. And SAC does a really wonderful job, and I'm sure does do a wonderful job of making sure that their students try everything.
Well, you're certainly a great representation of that. In addition to all the things we've talked about before, you have the leadership roles as well, the inter-house leadership, the prefectship as well. These are signs that, your peers look up to you as well.
Yeah, that was being a prefect was really special. It was a special group of guys. Alain Chacoin was our head prefect. And, it's strange. It's weird. I think by like the first term of 11th grade, you can immediately identify, like, of course, Al's going to be the head prefect. Or the year before, I think Yamada Yoshi was the head prefect, and you spot that as well. But being in a leadership role, Mr. Jocelyn, who was at the school at the time, was very, very helpful. And we took a lot of pride as prefects in, putting on good events, trying to tackle student life issues with some amount of perspective and patience.
What memories do you have of the old Ketchum Auditorium or of those rehearsals that, and speaking from my own personal experience, seemed to be almost every day and would go on for a long time? There was a lot of commitment required there.
I remember rehearsing and someone rolling into Ketchum Auditorium and being like, "You should have seen that game. The Titans were driving the ball and they got it to the 1 yard line, but the Rams won." Like, we were rehearsing during the Super Bowl. And if anyone remembers that, Kevin Dyson coming up, or maybe it was Kevin Dyson, I don't know, but the Titans coming up 1 yard short against the Rams, I didn't see a single snap of that game. When it comes to Ketchum Auditorium, I remember the smell. It was just kind of a little dank and just a little dense in there, like the heavy air. And man, we spent a lot of time there. I was very fortunate that at no point in time in any of the 3 productions that I did with William Schooler did I ever have to dance or learn any choreography that wasn't a fight with your fists or a sword fight, which I had in A Midsummer's Night Dream. Every time I get correspondence from the school, or I see a picture from the McPherson tournament, or I see anything from the arena, the hockey arena, or even even the football field. When I was there, we played some games on the lower fields, and then we played some games on the field that, I don't know if it still does, but ran parallel with the housing for the faculty, for the staff.
Yeah, with Masters Row. So that's where the arena is now. But was that the slope field?
Yeah. So we used to play on that field where you not only had to contend with the wind, but it was like, which team is going to be going downhill and which team is going to be going uphill. I'm very excited to get back and to see everything, hoping sometime in early 2026, I'll make it back and make it up.
St. Andrews, your time here comes to an end. Again, going back to the start of your time here, you never saw theater acting as a possibility. And in the 4 years here, that's completely changed. And you decide to actually go and pursue that as your career in life.
Yeah. It didn't happen. It didn't happen right away. But I left and I went to school for a year in California. And I won't mention the school because it was really bad. It just wasn't, I don't know. It wasn't as advertised. And acting school can be tricky at the best of times. There's no right or wrong way to act. Some people need to do all of this deep, thoughtful, investigative character work and background, and some people read a script and look at the director and say, how do you want me to say the line? And the director says, say it like this, and they do that, and it's much simpler. So acting school didn't really agree with me that much. But as I got into my early 20s, a couple of years removed from the school, back in Toronto, it's something that I started to just go after, and I got a couple of small parts, and it happened in fits and starts where I'd get a big role here, but I couldn't get a small role there. And then I think like a lot of people do, I went through some big life changes when I was in my late 20s and just really tried to take stock of what made me happy in life in general. And from a career perspective, from a professional perspective, that was being on a film set or a television set. And so I moved out to Los Angeles with, small expectations, but understanding that this really is much more of a career than people think. I mean, people, read about, for example, if you were reading about me getting cast in Arrow in 2012, that's the first time that you've seen me written about in the trades being like Variety or the Hollywood Reporter or you name it, Deadline. So that's the first time that you've seen somebody write something about me. So thus, I must be coming out of nowhere. Well, no. It had been 2 years since I moved to LA, and booking Arrow was my 10th American job in that time. And they start with small things, a couple of lines here, basically a glorified background performer. And once you get a few more reps, casting directors start trusting you more. And then you get into a position where you get a job that they end up putting your picture next to your name and writing about you in the trades. But, approaching it like a career has been very, very helpful. It is helpful right now because I'm as you are, as an actor, I'm currently in a state of transition, trying to think of, okay, like what's the next thing going to be? And, trying to have the patience to make sure that whatever it is, it's the right thing and not necessarily the next available thing.
Is that what it is patience? Because one of the things I wanted to ask you about is when you have a role like you did on Arrow, which lasts for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And then that ends. Yeah. What happens then? What's the next step?
Well, that was my decision along with Greg Berlanti, who did the show. I called him, we went for 8 seasons, and I called him the midway point of the 6th season, and I said, my contract's up after season 7, and I think that that's just going to be about enough. And he and I went back and forth, and so we ended up doing a truncated version of the 8th season. But, at that point in time, to answer your question, I tried to pick what was going to be next. I said, okay, finishing up 8 seasons of TV, did 170 episodes. It was 10 months a year. It was very physical. And and it was away from home being Los Angeles. We were in Vancouver. And I said to my manager, I said, all right, no TV, no long contracts, and nothing physical. I said those three things. And a week later, he called me and he said, I'm sending you a script. It's television. You're the lead. And it's about independent professional wrestling. And I said, pardon my language, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because I'm a huge wrestling fan. And I knew that the offer was coming. And I sat down and I read the script. I got 10 pages in and I'm like, oh, I don't even need to read the rest of this. Like, I'm clearly going to do this. This is amazing. And of course, then I went, all right, but I'm not signing anything more than a 2-year contract. And I want to limit the number of episodes. And they came back and said, it's going to be a 6-year contract and we're not limiting the number of episodes. And I said, deal. My experience thus far is that these jobs are dropped out of nowhere and right into my lap. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have to fight for them. I had to fight for Arrow, and I did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a bigger budget movie, and I had to fight for that. And I had to fight for Suits LA. Heels was an offer, but the common line, the through line for all of those was, you and I are sitting here talking on a Thursday afternoon. Let's say before all of these jobs came up, I had no idea they existed. And by the following Thursday, I had signed on to do them. I know that the next job is out there. I'm also at a point in my career where I am being proactive in terms of talking with people that I've worked with, that I'd like to work with again, and just setting that intention so that we are on each other's radars. The next thing is there. It's just a matter of just being patient and sort of, now I have 12, almost 15 years behind me of pretty consistent work. So I can't overreact to a couple of quiet months, but it is a daily exercise of trying not to overreact, but that's the truth.
I'm going to take you back here to one of your earlier works.
Hey, I'm not a hillbilly or a lumberjack, and I don't drive a tractor to school. Breathe in. That's air, not bus fumes. We have inspiration.
This was, of course, I'll fade that out. I'm not going to play the entire thing, but this is a project that you did with William Schooler at the launch of the Not an Ordinary Place campaign, 2010s. And I do want to mention that, because this comes back to something we were talking about earlier, in that, I'm going to get the words wrong, but you say something along the lines of, I do drama, I do sports, I do this, that, and the other. I'm not just one thing. I'm so many different things. And it comes back to sort of what I think you were talking about earlier when it comes to not just being in that one group, not being placed in that one identifying group here at St. Andrews. But so I do want to ask about that project, because it sort of sounds like this was one of those things again where William sort of told you gently that you were going to be in this, and you were gracious enough to do so.
So a couple of things about that. First of all, I don't know if we were doing this when we started recording or before, but I think that was my last time on campus, believe it or not. And that would have been in the spring of 2011. I remember because I was wrapping up the only season that I did of Hung on HBO, and I was shooting in Detroit. And I actually took a bus from Detroit to Toronto to see my mom, rented a car, came up, and we got on stage in Ketchum Auditorium. And I'm thinking of the way that we're going to shoot this. I'm like, all right, we're going to piecemeal this thing together. And I hadn't been on stage properly in probably 11 years since I left the school. And so I didn't memorize the whole thing. I'm like, I'm going to do this a couple sentences at a time. And William goes and invites a bunch of students in and goes, all right, let it rip. And I went, I don't know it. He goes, what do you mean? And all of a sudden, I was a student who hadn't done his homework, and I was mortified, like petrified, mortified, shaky, nervous, hungry, you name it. That was a fun project. We had a great day. Ketchum Auditorium. There you go. Maybe one of these days I could do a project so that more than the Queen's Gambit can say
right.
That was right. Weird. That was weird. I didn't know.
I wasn't prepared for that either.
I didn't know, and I'm watching it, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. And then she's having a conversation, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what is she? Is that where I ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 4 years? What is going on? Is that where I took my rugby and football photos? What is happening? So fingers crossed. So if you guys can make the campus available, maybe I can shoot something there one of these days.
I'm sure we can make it happen. And there is my conversation with Stephen Amell from the St. Andrews College class of 2000. Before we go, I should mention that we recorded that conversation back in September 2025, ahead of the Major League Baseball postseason, and Stephen talked about, I actually want to say it was more of a prediction, but he did talk about his desire for a Blue Jays-Dodgers World Series. That's even more impressive when you consider the Jays were right in the middle of an extremely close race for the division title at the time, and Stephen did indeed follow through on his promise to attend a game in LA wearing the correct blue and white uniform. A reminder that new episodes of Beyond the Gates are released monthly. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and more. Please rate and subscribe wherever you're listening. And for more, visit us online at sac.on.ca. I'm John Sandham. Thanks for listening.